So I'll, if you'd like me to start the talk, I'll launch straight into it. So I'll share my screen.
Yes, please.
If there's any issues, just let me know. And if you could deal with any questions in the chat, because I don't know if I'll be able to see it whilst I'm presenting, but if you just let me know if anybody's got any queries as I go through, that'd be helpful. Okay then, right, well, I'll launch into it. Thank you. Right, can you all see that?
That's lovely.
Okay, that's great. Right, yes, the title of my talk is Time to Hang Out the Washing and to Help Save the Planet. So what I'll do today is sort of introduce some of the work I've been doing, the research, and pose you a few questions to think about whilst I'm talking. And then we can have a little discussion about what you think about various household appliances and give you a bit more information about their energy use and CO2 emissions and that side of things as well. So just a picture of a few household appliances. They're quite colourful, these, that's why I chose that. So it's a bit red, but that's a good selection of things that we probably use quite regularly around the house. Right, the overview. So first of all, I'll discuss the aim of my research work. Then I'll go through some initial thoughts and perceptions that you may have from your side. I'll then tell you about CAST, which is the research group that I'm part of. That's the Centre for Climate and Social Transformations. I'll then talk about the image model, which is the model that I've been working with, the data from that. Also the research approach that I've taken that we're working with at the moment. And then discuss the current household appliance use in the UK with reference to increasing prices as well, which, as you say, is very pertinent at the moment. Then I'll just show a few model projections up to 2050. And then we can have our discussion on the household appliances. So first of all, the aim of the research work I'm working on at the moment, there's two main themes really. First of all, we want to determine the projected model changes in household appliance use for the period 2020 to 2050 for four countries, UK and Sweden, which is quite a progressive country in terms of what they're doing with regards to energy efficiencies and that side of things. And Brazil and China, because they're up and coming developing nations, and we want to see how things compare between basically a developed and a developing country. And then the second aspect of it is to discuss the results with people from different countries and determine feasible behavioural changes. So we have got some colleagues at Cardiff University who are psychologists. So they've been running workshops with people from the general public to see what they think about what we're proposing from the output from the model. So that's that side of things. So just covering initial thoughts and perceptions, I've just come up with a few questions to pose to you. You don't have to answer them straight away, it's just something to think about whilst I'm talking. So I'll just show them in a few moments. A quick sweep. Right. First of all, I would like you to rank the following appliances in terms of their annual energy use. So if you could just sort of think about this through the talk. So we've got 7 appliances there. That's television, clothes dryer, i.e. a tumbler dryer, dishwasher, microwave, a PC, personal computer, refrigerator, and a washing machine. So that's the first question. And then the second question is if you could sort of estimate the annual running costs of the following appliances and rank them with the most expensive first. You don't actually need to worry too much about the actual costs, but just to rank them, and then it gives you a feel for what you think is most expensive to run and what's the cheapest to run. So that's question number 2. And then the third one is what you think the CO2 emissions will be, what the ranking is for those. So what do you think is the appliance that emits the most CO2? So if you'd like to have a think about that, we'll come back to those after I've had a chat about what I've been working on. So a bit more about CAST, who are the group that are looking at social transformations. CAST is a global hub for understanding systematic and society-wide transformations that are required to address climate change. And we're looking at 4 challenge areas. That's material consumption, diet, mobility, and thermal comfort. Now I have a colleague in, well, 2 colleagues actually in University of East Anglia, and they've been focused on mobility and thermal comfort, but my remit's been to look at diet and material consumption. And I know Sarah Bridle had a chat with you, for those who were there, about diet at the end of last year. So I've decided to focus on material consumption and the household appliance aspects of my work. So as part of CAST, we want to come up with inspiring yet practical visions of the future, learn from the past, and look at current societal drifts. And we want to trial and test different models of change and then embed change through continuing communication and engagement. And another thing that's good that's happened with the group as a whole is Lorraine Whitmarsh, who's our professor who leads the whole project. She's just been awarded an MBE in the New Year's Honours List, so that's a very good prestigious thing for her to get. So that's congratulations to her on that. She deserves that. Right, and then in theme one on the visioning side, this is addressing the question of what could low carbon transformed futures look like. Again, with reference to study countries, we'll look at UK and Sweden, and then also Brazil and China. And we're focusing on sort of current and future emissions up to 2050. And then we want to looking at consumption diet based on existing 1.5 emission pathways. Now this pathway is the one that was discussed in Paris. I don't know if you remember that Paris Agreement. It's about 5 years ago now, I think, or a bit earlier than that. Anyway, we were wanting to get down to 1.5 degrees Celsius and stay within that sort of pathway. And that's the sort of best case scenario. So we wanted to, well, the model that we're using has been set so that it stays within that constriction. And also within that, we've got energy and land use transformation pathways. And then the work that I'm doing is sort of downscaling from the model output to data for UK and Sweden. And then we're just using data straight from the model for Brazil and China because it directly covers those particular regions. So that's the background to that. Now, you don't need to look at this in too much detail, just give you a feel for the model. So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but basically you've got the drivers at the top, which is the population, the economy, policies, technology, lifestyle, and resources. And then there's sort of the human system, which has got agriculture and land use in there, and also energy supply and demand. And then there's interactions with land cover and land use and emissions. And then there's the Earth system with the atmosphere and the oceans, together with the land, which includes sort of the ocean and grass, sorry, crops and grass, and then the nutrients and the carbon cycle within that. And then we've got various impacts that are also output by the model. So we've got climate impacts, water stress, ecosystem services. And then we've got the impacts of policy feeding into the model as well. So the model is what they call an integrated assessment model, which pulls together all these different aspects of, well, planetary existence, really, all the different factors that feed into that. So a bit more about Image. Image is, I'd say, an integrated assessment model, which has been developed by a research team led by Professor Detlev van Vuren, which he's based in the Netherlands. And he's been working on this model for a long time. It's been around, it's quite well established. And it can be used to explore global greenhouse emission pathways that are consistent with different levels of global warming. So it projects developments in technology, population, lifestyle, policy and resources that impact on the land and energy and land sectors, and then it contributes to the emission pathways over time and across regions. So everything sort of interacting with each other within the model. So it's sort of been built up over lots of individual models and then being pulled together to look at the whole world, if you like. So a bit more about the scenarios. As I mentioned, we want to get, well, we want to stay within 1.5 degree by 2050 to keep constrained within that scenario. Within the model run that we've been looking at, the output from that, the carbon tax, there is a carbon tax introduced into the model in 2020. So that sort of constrains how much extra CO2 emissions will be permitted, or if the emissions increase and you get taxed for that. The population projection is sort of a medium growth population. So it's sort of not high population growth, but it's sort of a steady growth. Also within the model, they've increasing the electrical efficiency. So as countries develop, in theory, the electrical efficiency will improve. So that's also built in there. And also we've got lower appliance ownership than in the baseline by capping future ownership to 2010. So was one version of the model where it's just a standard model where things just develop as you'd expect. But in this one, we've actually capped the ownership of appliances, and we've got a factor where they phase out tumble dryers. So they phase out in the model by 2030, which you'll see when I show you a few examples of model output. You can see this happening. So our approach has been to extract the output for electricity use for each household appliances for the 3 regions. That's Western Europe, but it's called WEU in the model, Brazil and China. And then we've got to downscale the Western Europe data for UK and Sweden, because these countries have originally, they were aggregated up to make Western Europe, but we want to look at what's actually going to happen in terms of UK and Sweden, so we can put some nuances with the national data and then calculate what will happen on a per capita basis. And then we can calculate future projections using the projections for Western Europe from image. So that gives us an indication of the general direction of where things would go if we stayed within the scenario. And then we've also been discussing the results with people at workshops run by my colleagues at Cardiff University, and also fellow academics, policymakers and industry. And then ultimately we will produce some publications about the approach and present our results in an academic paper and possibly other publications as well. So just to give you an example of what things are like at the moment, this pie chart shows current energy uses. So that's all energy, that's not just electricity, that's fuel and electricity and coal and everything else basically. So from this pie chart, you can see that we roughly split 3 ways. So domestic's about 1/3 of the energy usage, so that's residential homes, transport about 1/3, and then industry, commerce, public administration, agriculture take up the rest. So that's the actual split on all energy usage. And then if I show you the next slide, this shows you the split for household electricity usage. So on this pie chart, you can see that appliances take up 60% of the electricity usage, and also lighting, that's about 14%. And the rest is made up of space heating, that's water heating and cooking. So this is just electricity usage. So we don't use too much electricity for space heating, that's mainly dominated by gas. And same with the water heating, that's gas driven mainly. So electricity is just controlling the gadgets that control those items. Right, how do we compare with Europe? Again, this is data, I think this is 2018, these data. So I've just sort of shown sort of the highest emitter here, which is Norway. This is per capita, so that's kilowatt hours per person. And then that's around sort of 1800. And then we go right down to Portugal, and they're around 600. And Sweden is slightly higher, well, quite a bit higher than us actually, 1600. And then we've got us around 1200. So we're sort of in the middle of the range compared to the rest of Europe. So that just gives you a feel for where we fall in that group of countries. Right, the image household appliances that the model breaks down are clothes dryer or tumble dryer, dishwasher, microwave, personal computer and other electrical appliances associated with that, refrigerator, TV, washing machine, and other appliances. And these include things like vacuum cleaners and irons, that kind of thing, anything basically not covered by the other categories. So just to give a flavour of the model projections, I don't want to overwhelm you with data, but just to give you a feel for the general trends over the next 30 years, basically. So I'll just initially show you the comparison between Brazil, China and Western Europe. So Brazil is blue, China is red, that's easy to remember, and Western Europe is green. So this is the sort of baseline, this is 2010, and this is what the model projects for 2020, and then all the changes within the model are implemented over this time period. So things to note basically is that China is quite low initially in 2010, and there's quite a big jump up to 2020 because it's developed quite quickly. And now it's sort of on a par with Brazil, but obviously we're quite a bit higher at the moment. But over time, with the changes implemented in the model, our household electricity use will come down. That's with the efficiencies and also with reducing the amount of times that we use certain appliances. And in terms of Brazil, they do go down and then slightly back up again. So that's again with them developing, that they need to develop, and more appliances will be bought over time. So, but having said that, they never get quite as high as we do with China. So China gradually creeps up, and then by 2050, the model projects that China and ourselves, Western Europe, will be about the same appliance usage. So that's around 400. So that's basically half of what we're using at the moment. So that's what we would need to do to stay within that 1.5 degree scenario with appliances. Now, next few slides I'm going to show you is just breaking down the different appliances within each country for that time frame. So first of all, I'll show you what we're looking at for 2020 to 2050 for Western Europe. So this shows the breakdown of the different gadgets. So that the blue coloured ones, the light blue is clothes dryer, and then the dark blue is washing machine. So that's the washing components or the washing appliances. And then we've got the dishwasher, which is green, refrigerator sort of light brown, TV red, PC purple, then microwave, and then other. So over the course of this period, we are gradually getting down to this 400 mark. And this shows how by 2030, it's totally phased out clothes dryers. So that's basically why you need to hang out the washing if you don't have a clothes dryer. So the model actually gets rid of it altogether in this scenario. And then the other appliances with greater efficiencies and with fewer appliances being bought, they're sort of kept held at the 2010 purchase level. We gradually get down again to 2050. The other changes, TV is quite a big chunk of that, and that gradually reduces down as well. And also this other category, again, irons and vacuum cleaners, that sort of stays. If anything, it goes up slightly, but that's relative to the other gadgets as well. So that just gives you a feel for what's happening in Western Europe. Now, in terms of Brazil, they start off from a lower starting point. So we're around 250 here. They have got quite a lot of TVs in this scenario, and also refrigeration. Refrigeration is pretty important, obviously, for hot countries to keep their food cool, and also to reduce food waste, that kind of thing. They've got quite high amounts of clothes dryers and washing machines. And again, that's phased out, but they retain the washing machines, so they're still at quite a reasonable level. And then as the steady drop to 2014, and this slight rise again for 2050. So that's made up again of refrigeration and other appliances. And then finally, for China, they are very low in 2010, and then they jump up quite quickly with the rapid development they had. And then again, the other appliances increase, and then we get a decrease in the tumbler dry again, and then again the TVs are still fairly high all the way through. But this point here is getting to the same point that we were coming down to from our 800, so we both end up in the same place according to the model. So that's just an overview of that. So does anybody have any questions before I go any further with that I can help you with? Anything in the chat?
Hi, Susan. It's Lata.
Hi there.
Hi. Just a question on the household energy use. So the graphs you had, was that per household, or was that as a country as a whole?
That was a country as a whole. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Because I was thinking if it's per household, then it's quite frightening if China are catching up to us.
Hello.
Yeah.
Just a quickie, Susan. What RP value are you using, and what does this image actually end up with temperature-wise? Is it the lowest RP value pathway?
It is. Yes, it's the lowest pathway. It's the best case scenario. So
and the refrigeration doesn't include the in the refrigeration, it's just for food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
Excellent talk so far. Carry on.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I should just clarify that there are lots of different scenarios. So there's what they call social economic pathways. So the one that we're working with is the best possible one. So that's where everything has been done that we can do to adapt, and everything's been done to ensure that we reduce the climate emissions. But there are other scenarios which are sort of more where things cause the temperature to rise more rapidly. So we want to try and avoid that. So we're just saying what can be done from a perspective of lifestyle change. So that's what we're showing with this anyway.
Susan, Andrew Backhouse has his hand up. Andrew, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, he's put a hand on. Yeah.
Andrew?
I think you're on mute, Andrew.
Thank you. Sorry, Susan. Sounds very idealistic and realistic. We're getting more. We're going to need more air conditioning or do something very different because of the warming of Britain. We've got to switch from gas to electricity for heating, if we're going to do heating. It feels, is that really real?
Well, the scenario that I'm looking at is actually looking at household appliances, but we were looking at space heating as well. So that aspect is covered in a different part of the model. So, I'm just focusing on the appliances, but as I say, my colleagues down in East Anglia, they were looking at thermal comfort. So they were looking at the space heating side and the air conditioning units as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is just household appliances today. So, okay. Is that okay? Is everybody else? Do you want to question Frank?
Yeah, I was just wondering why you've missed out on microwaves. I would have thought that's quite an efficient way of heating food and that. The gas seem to miss out on the microwave. The 2040 and 2050, it doesn't have any column for microwave.
Right, okay. Yeah, it seems to go very small, doesn't it? It sort of diminishes down, yeah.
Small and disappears, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
But I mean, it is a very efficient form of heating, especially
yeah,
for food stuff. But anyway, you may have a look at that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Susan, thanks.
Okay.
Oh, Ian, oh no, Ian Porter would like to ask a question as well. Ian, do you want to just have a quick one?
Yes, please. You're talking about global warming, and surely the extent of global warming from the use of electricity depends on the source of the electricity. If we're using fossil fuels to generate electricity, then we get a lot of global warming. If we're using things like hydroelectric and wind power, then we don't get a lot of global warming. I noticed at the beginning of your talk, the electricity use, in Norway was very high. But then, of course, a lot of their electricity is generated by hydroelectricity, is it not?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So within the model, we're ultimately moving towards more renewable energy within that. So that can be made up of things like biofuels as well as renewable energy such as solar panels and wind farms as well. So that will be reducing the fossil fuels. But yeah, you're right, it is the mixture of the different power sources within there that will impact on how much CO2 is emitted. So that's all sort of worked out within the model. They all sort of interact with the land use. So there is a component of biofuel in there, so that can take account of that as well. So that can be fed into the fuel supply.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you have a question, Helen?
Yes, I do. It was that right at the very beginning, you said that electrical efficiency is linked to economic growth. And I'm afraid I just don't even understand that basic premise. Please, can you explain, please?
Well, what tends to happen as countries develop, then they tend to sort of initially people are able to buy more products, but then over time, I suppose now that people are more aware of the implications of these products, then over time they become more efficient. So initially they might not be that bothered about energy efficient, but as people get more wealth, if you like, they're more inclined to be aware of that. So it's not a direct link, but basically economic growth drives purchases of appliances. And then over time, these appliances tend to get more efficient. And I think the EU has actually put some sort of legislation in to ensure that they are efficient, or a lot more efficient than they used to be. That's a positive. Any more queries? Anybody else?
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I am struggling to understand this source of electricity that you've based all your calculations on. And the previous question, you were beginning to address it. And you must have based your calculations on a source of electricity which is changing over time as more non-fossil fuel energy is used, or is it all based on fossil fuel electricity? Can you clarify it more for me? I'm struggling.
Well, within the model itself, it sort of takes the current mix of energy, and then over time, that mix is altered as more renewables come in. So the amount of fossil fuel goes down, and then the amount of electricity that's derived from renewables will increase.
That's amazingly complicated in 4 different countries, isn't it?
It is. The integrated assessment model is extremely complicated. Yes, yes. It's been developed over about 20 years. So they've bolted together lots of different models, and then all the economic interactions feed back into the land use and also the climate. So yeah, it is very complicated when you dig into the nuts and bolts of the model. So we're just sort of using the output to sort of simulate what would happen at a more local level to make it more understandable to everybody. Because, as I say, trying to understand every single bit of the model is quite a challenge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Susan, I think we better let you carry on for a while. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I'll crack on now. Right, I thought I'd give you some answers to the questions that I posed at the beginning. So I don't know if you want to look at your rankings and see what you think, but this is question number 1. The most energy usage is from a PC, and then the next item's clothes dryer, followed by dishwasher, refrigerator, washing machine, TV, and microwave at the bottom. So it's interesting to see that for each of those 3 questions, it's the same ranking. So I don't know if everybody found that, or is anybody surprised by that, the results? Or was that?
Yes. I think I am, because I've seen, I mean, 10 years ago, yes, I would have put PCs at the top, but I've seen them come down in power usage, considerably, so that even the big monitors now, when they're in sleep mode, barely use a watt over an evening. So I am very surprised to see that up there, considering the changes I've seen in the last, especially in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think part of that is because of the usage, because people tend to use them a lot. And there's other gadgets as well within that. So we'd get things like chargers within that category. So there's lots more gadgets around that people use that are actually using all that.
Presumably, Susan, one thing is that the PC is on it for a very long time and it uses much less power than a washing machine. So it's actually people's use of things as well as their efficiency and how much they actually use when they're on.
That's right, yeah.
And is this from actual measured data from the countries?
This is from people like energy saving trusts. I can run through some individual gadgets to show you some figures if you want to see how it's all worked out. But if you look at the final column here as well, I've sort of looked at usage per session, and that's where the PC goes right down to the bottom and the closer dry comes up again. So yeah, that just rearranges it slightly when you take into account how often they're used.
Do you know if, does the PC usage relate to domestic use in houses, or is it national use of PC, including commercial and industrial use of PCs?
This is just inside this house. This is household appliances.
Just domestic house. I'm astonished by the PC usage. Okay, thank you.
Does it include Xboxes and things though?
Yes, I think it does. Yeah, yeah. It's sort of quite a broad category, I think.
Susan, isn't it a shame that we don't use off-peak electricity more? You know, the generator just idling really during the night time, and you know, it should be sort of used a bit more to try and level out the usage.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because there's the Economy 7 system, whereby if you have storage heaters, you can heat them up overnight. And at the moment, energy is cheaper at night time, but with things happening with smart meters, the energy use is going to be spread out more during the day, so it won't be cheaper at night anymore. So there's going to be a leveling off of the actual time when you use energy. It won't be cheap at night anymore.
And then you can charge cars up as well, of course. There'll be a lot more cars to charge up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the charging mechanisms change with different companies as well, because I know electric cars are cheap at the moment, but that might change over time when more people use them and there's a great demand on the system as well.
Thank you.
I've got some data here just to give you a feel for those figures. So in terms of the annual usage, 600 kilowatt hours for a PC, and the amount of CO2 produced per kilowatt hour, I think I worked that out from some data that I had, and then that comes out as 0.17 pence per kilowatt hour. And then I worked out the annual costs, so the PCs are the most expensive on that basis. And then the annual emissions are highest for the PC, and the usage per session here is 0.21 per session. The washing machine is 0.86, and then the clothes dryer is 2.5. So again, that comes back to the hanging out the washing. The tumbler dryer uses the most per session. So you could use it less frequently, but it uses a lot of energy when you do use a clothes dryer. So I can go through some individual figures here. So a standard clothes dryer costs about 46 pence for each run and emits 0.65 kilograms of CO2. and over a year, it costs you £70 to run a clothes dryer. And from the Energy Saving Trust, they recommend that you should, if you do have a tumble dryer, to part dry your clothes in a tumble dryer, and then you can finish them off on a clothesline or a clothes horse or a washing line. Also, if you clean the filter after every use and dry loads in batches to make the most of the heat in the machine, and it may slightly reduce the drying time. So that's the tumbler dryer statistics. I've got some data on dishwasher. The bigger the dishwasher in terms of place settings, the greater the energy consumption, which I suppose is quite logical. The average value is 1.5 kilowatt hours. So for sort of a fairly small dishwasher, we're talking about £79 for a year. And if you get a bigger one, you've got the economies of scale. So that's, you have fewer cycles, that's slightly reduced cost, that's £53 a year. So that gives you a feel for the figures of the dishwasher. And a bit more information on that. That just gives you the different cycles and the place settings for that. So again, basically fill your dishwasher to capacity to get the best out of it. In terms of microwaves, somebody was mentioning microwaves. For 5 minutes, it costs you 1.6 pence. And if you had them on for an hour at a higher power rating, that'd be about 41 pence for an hour. Yeah, on average, a microwave will use 30 to 50% more energy than the rated output. And microwaves are good because they only actually heat your food and not the airspace around it. Bit on PCs. Apparently, laptops typically use 85% less electricity every year than a desktop. And you can save up to £25 per year by choosing a laptop over a desktop. And tablets use 70% less power than laptops, which is quite significant. So, that's of interest if you have some technology there. In terms of refrigerator, an annual running cost for a refrigerator is about £54. If it's a bigger one, obviously more expensive. That's going up. That's getting on for about double the price. And they recommend that you select the smallest product that will meet your household needs. And if you have an ice maker, that will decrease the energy consumption. And the cyclic defrost fridges are more economical than frost-free, which is interesting to know. And the side-by-side refrigerators use more energy than similar-sized models with the freezer on top. And the TV, this is quite interesting actually, because the plasma screen, if it's a big one, costs about £0.075, so it's about 7.5 pence for an hour. And then we've got £17 for an annual cost for a 30-inch LED. Again, a lot more if you've got a 60-inch plasma screen, that's quite significantly more, and it produces a lot more CO2 as well on that basis.
Susan, do you see many 60-inch plasmas now? Because they tend to be mostly LED now.
Yes,
Plasma's
yeah,
quite old.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. It's just to give you a feel for the range, because it's quite surprising how much LEDs have revolutionised energy efficiency, both on TVs as well as lighting as well. So it just shows what a difference it makes.
It'd be useful to see, I guess, compare the 60-inch LED against the 60-inch plasma.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I've got that. Yeah, I think I got those off the Energy Saving Trust, so I could actually go and have a look at that. I'm just giving a range of values. So
yeah,
a cathode ray screen uses much energy as a 30 plasma screen. So That's £51. And that reduces.
I guess you've got that comparison there of the 30-inch plasma against the 30-inch LED.
Yeah. So that's not 51.
A third of the cost.
Yeah, big difference. That's 21 kilograms compared to 63. That's about a third. Yeah. So it's definitely worth getting one of those. And the washing machine. It's the most heavily used appliance in the home. And on an average, 220 times a year, it costs between £25 and £35 a year. And wet appliances account for near 10% of household energy bills. So again, that's why it's good if you can hang out the washing if you can. Problem with winter time is you have to really keep indoors really in the UK. So if you've got a drying rack, keep it somewhere warm and well ventilated, then you can save on that score. But the thing is, make sure that it's kept warm, because if it's cold, you get risks of condensation. And obviously, you don't want to let cold air into the house in winter time either. So that's one way to look at that. I just popped the kettle in because I thought people might be interested in kettles, seeing we're English and we like our tea. Yes, so the cost per year is based on 3 kettle boils, 365 times a day. So, 365 times a year. So that's £3.68 pence cost per boil, which is about £40 a year for your kettle on a 3,000 watt kettle. So,
but you're not likely to fill it to its maximum each time.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So there'll be some variation within that.
And if you do fill it to its maximum, put the hot water you didn't need into a flask.
Yes.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
It's what they do at CAT.
Excellent idea. And then standby. The average UK household spends £40 a year powering appliances left on standby. So there are some regulations now that have come in. Well, they came in 2013. So there is some legislation that can't have a power greater than 0.5. And they must not consume more than 3 to 12 watts, depending on the product. So I hope you've found this an informative discussion, and hopefully it'll help save the planet as well as your pocket. And if you require any further reading, I've got some links there for you to look at. And the Energy Saving Trust is very good for sort of giving you tips and data on different appliances. So that's a useful source to look at as well. So Andrew, you've probably got a load of advice as well on that score from Francis as well.
You did drop me in it, don't you, Susan? That's very good. Well, Francis, my wife, lectures at the Centre for Alternative Technology. She's just gone answer the phone outside. I think the key things, we always tell people, isn't it? It's what our grandparents did. It's like turn things off, hang your washing outside. Our grandparents are far better at it than we are. You know, I mean, sorry, there are some of you who are probably that much older than me that it's not your grandparents. You do it already. But it's those simple things. It's like, don't boil too much water in the kettle. It's not, don't wash too often. Sorry, don't wash your clothes too often. Things like that. Those are the things I can think of immediately. So those are what I'd throw in.
I think Pauline's question came to us all, but I think it was really aimed at Susan. Is there a sort of top tip or a couple of top tips that we can do locally, sort of as a community, to focus on energy saving within the domestic scene, Susan?
That's a good question.
I mean, if we had a campaign for Wilmslow, you know, Wilmslow Wednesday washing day, you know, and everybody has the washing out, and you know.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Another thing that has been mooted, I've heard discussions that some people say that it's good to have a sort of communal washing facility like a laundrette, and then you can get more things in one load. rather than everybody running individual washing machines. But having said that, our local laundrette on Chapel Lane's recently closed, so that's a bit of a shame. So, but another option.
Rona, do you want to unmute yourself? Rona, just press your space bar.
I think you're muted, Rona.
If you just press your space bar.
Yeah.
I don't think I can unmute myself. Or
You might be able to, Stuart. If you just right click on her.
I'm just going to try.
Lost the video.
Rona, can you? I'm struggling. No, has to unmute.
Wait.
Oh, you're there. Well done.
That's it. Done it. Sorry. I couldn't get it.
Rona, right, over to you.
Okay, my question is, what can we do about developments, particularly flats and other developments, where they don't allow you to hang your washing out? And certainly in America, they forbid it entirely in many, many places. Florida, California, where they have wonderful weather, no excuse for not hanging it out, but they don't allow it because they think it doesn't look nice.
Yeah, that's a shame, because I know, if depending on the height of the building, I know in Spain they often hang the washing out on the roof of flats.
Absolutely, yes,
yeah.
And across the street. And you go to these places and you tend to think it looks very picturesque.
Yes.
But here it somehow, it lowers the tone, I think, is the feeling, which to me is absolutely ridiculous.
It is, yeah. I think a lot more could be made of using roofs and gardens, because a lot of flats have gardens, but there again.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. But, I know a number of flats around here where you certainly wouldn't be allowed to put your washing on the balcony.
Pauline, did you want to contribute to that one?
Yeah, I do actually, because on the basis of the talk title, I was feeling very encouraged, because a year ago I stopped using my tumble dryer completely, and it's so easy, and you don't need a washing line in the garden. Most of the time it's indoors. If you've got a centrally heated house, a rack and an airing cupboard, and the clothes dry overnight, and it's much, much better than I could ever have imagined. When I think of all the energy I've wasted over the years, I am deeply shocked. And really, honestly, everybody do try it. And all you've got to do is open the window an inch just to let the condensation out once or twice. And really, it's so good. And I'm shocked how much energy the tumble dryers use. So do it. You don't even have to do it outside. I mean, okay, so you haven't got the fresh summer breeze going through your clothes, but it's okay indoors. Try it.
I do.
How many other people do that?
Oh,
we do, Pauline.
Yes, I do, yes.
But you have to be really careful.
My flat looks like a child.
You end up using household heating energy to dry your washing that way, and you end up needing more energy to keep your home warm, because you're drying your clothes in it, than you would if you'd got them hung outside. So washing line outside wins where you can. Certainly airing it off in the house when at this time of year you can't get them fully dry on the line. That's good. I think we've got a problem though now, compared with a generation or two ago. There's an awful lot of households where there's nobody in during the day, 5 days a week, to watch any washing that's on the line and to fetch it in if a Manchester cloud comes over and reckons to deposit its load. Whereas sort of a couple of generations ago, there was more likely to be somebody at home to fetch the washing in, perhaps. Not quite so easy for everybody these days.
But to counter that, Francis, a lot of homes are too dry, and putting stuff up actually does add to the humidity. So it's more comfortable actually, and more healthy. And I speak as a person that's got 2 sheets hanging over my banisters at the moment.
I think one of the marvellous things about these talks is that we do get some very wide contributions, and it's amazing the experience that comes from within the Transition Wilmslow, Civic Trust, WI, and other connections. Any other contributions at this stage?
Please, Stuart. Yes, if I may.
Yes, carry on, Ian.
Hi, Stuart. At least during the winter months when you're heating your house, presumably there's a trade-off between the heat generated by your PC and your television and your electric lights with your space heating. That I would believe that none of the energy from my TV is wasted because it reduces the amount of heat I need to burn to keep the thermostat at the same level. And in the design of a house, I would expect it to be more energy efficient to have all the heat producing appliances like dishwashers, washing machines, fridges within the living space in the kitchen rather than outside in a cold utility room. As if they're in the living space in the kitchen, you get exactly the same trade-off, that none of that energy is wasted because you need less space heating.
That's a very interesting contribution.
It depends how well insulated you are as well. If the insulation's good, then it keeps it within a given area as well. So if you've got good insulation, it keeps it in your house.
So that trade-off must exist. So I'm not using any extra energy if I run my TV because I'm using less heating energy.
That'll be true of your TV, Ian, but a dishwasher, washing machine, tumble dryer, of course, are getting rid of most of the hot stuff down the drain or out through a window.
They are. That's certainly true with a tumble dryer and a dishwasher. A lot of heat is going out through the pipes. Not true of a fridge. All the energy the fridge uses goes straight into the atmosphere in the room.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So I actually have...
Before Anthony, did you want to come in? You very patiently have your hand up. Do you want to? That's it.
No. Well, just a suggestion. I think the any legislation about not being able to hang your washing out is just scandalous. So I would suggest this is time for a national, at least day, if not 365 days of disobedience.
Campaign.
Yeah. Just start it. Just start hanging your washing out.
If I could chip in there.
What if people get evicted?
Ian, you
came across a strange law today. It was a video. It was actually about Tesla solar tiles on a roof. The person making the video in Texas then started talking about gathering rainwater from the roof. And he says that used to be illegal in Texas. There are many states that have had legislation against water harvesting. Rainwater harvesting used to be illegal in most American states for reasons that I do not begin to understand. But there's weird legislation all around the world prohibiting all sorts of things that you would have thought were very environmentally friendly. If I can make another comment about central heating, we have a central heating system where each room is controlled separately and each room's on a sensor. So at the moment in our lounge where we are now, the sensor knows we're in the lounge. The moment we walk out of our lounge and go to another room, the heating switches off in this room, and the only room being heated in the house is the room where we are. And if we walk out of the house, then the heating stops completely. I have no idea how much energy that saves, but it makes me feel good inside. I'm sure it must be saving some energy, though I have no means of knowing how substantial the saving is, and no way of knowing whether we'd offset the capital cost of putting the system in.
There's an argument that says that letting a room go cold then heating it again actually costs more. So there's probably a formula you could work out to come to an answer on that one. Regarding the waste heat from products like televisions and the old incandescent lights, yes, of course they give out heat, and that does reduce the amount of heat, the money you have to spend on space heating, but they're not very efficient at doing that. So they don't give out very much heat for the energy that they consume. So just something to be aware of.
You don't use them as a room heater. Use them for the original purpose.
Yeah, they're designed to give out light or be a TV, not to be a heater.
No, unfortunately, the tungsten lamp gives out 95% amount of heat and 5% of light. And the LED is much more efficient. But the thing is that you buy a lamp to give you lighting, you don't give it to give heat. And when Harold Wilson opened a lighting laboratory, he spoke about a tungsten lamp being a bit like a politician. Politicians often shed little light, but generate lots of heat. Could I just thank Susan for what I thought was a really good talk, Susan, some really good stuff. And it's great to see these models going into such detail, and that this is actually going to apply to other countries. But my question is, if I may, that there was work done some time ago on disaggregated smart meters, which would tell you which appliance was actually using the amount of energy and where it was, because smart meters say what your energy consumption is. And the second thing is that in the future, appliances will be smart. So your washing machine will come on at night, and you will find your refrigerator is turned off. And I remember I was looking at my smart meter and I was really pleased that I had 0 consumption. And then all of a sudden it came on about 150 watts. And I thought, I reckon that's my son. He's done something just to upset me and make me use that much more energy. And then I suddenly realized the fridge had switched on. But it's interesting how much it does actually use with these things. And thank you so much for showing how much the dishwasher uses, because I rarely use the dishwasher, but I'm heavily criticised in the family because I'm a very poor washer-upper. And they say, no, we're not having your dirty dishes because you can't wash up properly. But now I've got an even better argument, Susan. So thank you very much for a really good talk and giving me justification for carrying on washing dirtily.
Now, I'm getting to the stage where I think I should begin to wind things down, and we've got some chat that everyone can read. I think that one's all right. In a moment or two, I will ask you to all unmute. But because we've got such a high proportion of ladies here tonight, and some lovely visitors from the WI in various quarters, I'd like to ask Pauline Hanley to wind up proceedings and just say a special thank you to Dr. Susan Lee for her talk this evening. Pauline, over to you.
Well, first of all, I think Stuart and Geoffrey Livermore have already indicated the excellence of Susan's talk is totally thought-provoking, in-depth, complicated, but so much there for us to analyse and work out what it means for us. I think our clothes drying habits and our dishwashing habits might well change. And basically, we're going to have to look hard at your data and think what we can do individually to reduce the cost and to reduce the carbon footprint of everything we do which regard using energy. And obviously, using energy, electricity from renewable resources must be top of our list. And I'm just aside, I'm a WI climate ambassador, and I've invited all the other climate ambassadors from Cheshire tonight. And I wanted very much, Susan, to get your ideas on how we as the WI climate ambassadors can inspire 200,000 WI members to change their habits and to reduce their carbon footprint. So there's a lot in your talk, a huge amount for us to take home and think about and work on. And from the discussion, you can see how interested we are and how analytical we need to be to really get to grips with it all. But thank you very, very much for such a very interesting, very analytical talk, which has inspired us all to do more for the planet and do more for our pocket. So thank you very much indeed.
Pauline, that is lovely, and I endorse everything that's been said, and I'm sure that the climate ambassadors will be taking a lot home, and you will be influencing a lot of people, Susan. Will you all join me in a traditional English round of applause? Thank you, everybody. Susan, you and I will keep in touch, and no doubt we'll speak soon. Take care, everybody. Our next meeting is on the 2nd of February, when you will be right royally entertained by somebody else, all in a very relaxing manner. Thank you and good night.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good if it's real then.